Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll let some other folks join, and we still have a poll working that you guys can answer some questions. We can know where you're coming from before we start this webinar. Okay, looks like some more folks are joining. We'll go ahead and get started in just a minute. All right, so looking at the polls here, it looks like quite a lot of you use ISP data attendance. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show my screen. Can you send that back to me? It won't let me share my screen.
I'm working on it right now.
Awesome. Okay, while we're working on that, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This webinar is for generating billing data from attendance and ISP and case notes. My name is Dawn Gilder. I am a billing specialist with Therap. I've been with Therap for about 4 years now. Prior to working for Therap, I worked for an ICF here in Northern Nevada and doing billing and many other hats, as we're all familiar with in this industry. We do a lot of various things. So welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here and taking some time out of your Friday to join us. While we're working on sharing the screen, just a few things. You are all muted. So if you have some questions, there is a chat window in your GoToWebinar that you can type some questions in there. So Devin's on the call too. He is with Therap. He is going to be answering some questions as we go along, or letting me know that there's some questions that we can answer as we go along. So it looks like we are all set. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen. And again, thank you, Devin. All right, so as we're going along here, just let us know if you have questions. We'll try to answer them throughout the webinar. Some may be held to the end, and we'll get those answered as we can. So, all right, so as this class is for generating billing data from ISP and attendance and case notes, before we get started in the functions of how to actually generate your billing data, we're going to talk about the user privileges and super roles and how you have those roles to do those functions. So on our admin tab here, we'll start out with our user privileges. Okay, we've got user privileges and manage. Okay, and we'll find my name here. Okay, so we're in the user privilege section. This is agency-wide administrative roles. These functions here in the module roles give you the ability to generate billing data across the entire agency. Okay, so we've got ISP billing conversion, we've got case note billing conversion here, and EVV. Okay, so these functions you'll need in order to generate billing data. And then down here in this bottom section, this is for your claims processing, and some reporting are tied into these functions as well. But this electronic billing section here is for the claims side of it. Okay. All right, so again, generating billing data, we're going to be converting data from ISP to a billing data, or case note to a billing data, or so on. Okay. Let's save that. All right, our next section here is for super roles and manage. We'll edit this admin one here. Okay, so here is our super role list. Okay, in the attendance section, you'll need these functions here to be able to view and update, submit, and approve your attendance. And then your billing data is actually this bottom section down here in the billing. So in order to generate billing data, again, we'll need to be able to submit data, view it, possibly update, and then be able to run our summary reports. So it would also be important for this. Okay. And you have some service authorization functions in that super role as well. All right, let's go back to the dashboard. Okay, so before we go into actually generating billing data from these, we need to look at now how it connects. Okay, and that is done in your service authorization. So on the polls, it looks like most of you know what a method of data collection is. For a few of you, looks like had some questions there. The method of data collection, you have options in Therap for what you'll use to document, have your staff document, and then be able to convert that data into a unit, which is how we speak on a claim. So that generating billing data is that process of converting data from an ISP or attendance or case notes, or now the EVV scheduling piece, converting that data your staff have entered into the unit. So again, you have options, and we're here to help you make that an informed decision as much as possible. So some considerations about how you would choose that method of data collection. Maybe some questions to ask as you're going along are, what is your service? Okay, what's the service that you're providing, and what's the unit of measure? Okay, is it a 15-minute service? Is it an hourly service? Is it daily? Is it mileage, or maybe done by trip? And then if you have any requirements, so any regulations on documenting that are handed down from the state. Okay, so if they're looking for not just that the client was present or absent that day, are they looking for that quality note to go along with it? Okay, and then another question you might also ask in choosing your method of data collection are some staff considerations. So, for instance, if you are required to enter a quality note about the details of what happened during the day, if it's a daily service, you may, in considering staff, may not want to have the present absent option in attendance and then them also have to document their note in ISP data. Okay, so some things that we can discuss as you're working with your billing specialist about what method would be best for your agency and what your needs are. Okay, so let's go over to our service authorizations. So we want to look at how we're actually connecting this method of data collection in the system that makes it work. So let's look for an individual. We'll search our service authorizations, and we'll pull up this one here for Happy Howard. He has quite a bit in here, so we can look at lots of different examples. You'll see in this service lines, scroll down just a bit, that the method of data collection is actually here tied to the service. Okay, and as you can see, we've got a mix. So in choosing what your method of data collection is going to be for your agency, you don't have to choose just one method for all of your services. Okay, there might be one that works better with attendance than it does with ISP, or ISP as opposed to attendance, or some case note needs. So as long as you're consistent with everybody in your agency that has independent living service is using ISP data, it won't get confusing. Okay, so then we've got our day program here with attendance. So we've got a mix, but anybody who has day program, we want to assign attendance. Okay, so let's take a look at inside that service line. So I have an independent living service here. I'll pull this up so you can see that we have this independent living service is an hourly service. Okay, I've got my units in here. Won't focus too much on that, but here is my method of data collection. What am I going to link to? Okay, if I am linking to an ISP data, that is a one-on-one type of service. We need one ISP program to one service. Okay, I wouldn't want to use the same note for another service because then I get some duplicate data. Okay, we don't want duplicate units. Unless you have a service that goes hand in hand that always applies with the other one, you could do something like that. But otherwise, that's pretty rare. Otherwise, we are looking at a one-to-one with that ISP program. Okay, so we've linked in. Let me take this off so you can see how you'd actually link that in. So I've chosen ISP data here, and it says link to ISP program. You click add. It'll bring up a list of programs that are available to link to this service. Okay, that big one here that folks missed, this ISP, the program site. If your service authorization is in this program site, it will pull that ISP program you're looking for in that same program site. So keep that in mind. You need to have the ISP program created in the same program site that your service authorization is going to house in. Okay, I actually want to link to this ISP program down here. I know that's where I have some data, so I'm choosing this program to link to and saying add. Okay, so again, there's my form ID for that one ISP program I'm going to link to. All right, so let's go back and look at the attendance. Okay, so I have a day program here that is linked to method of data collection attendance. Okay, and as you can see, I've got a few attendance types that were created in my admin settings. Okay, so for attendance, we're going to create some rules that apply to this setting. So for this service, I'm choosing which attendance type I am going to link to. Okay, we'll go back and take a look at those in just a minute. I'm choosing this one attendance type. This particular one also has a supporting document. You don't have to have that in with your attendance, but basically what that's doing is saying my method is attendance. I am going to use the data in attendance to convert for a unit. However, in order to validate that, or before I can generate that attendance data, I need to have something in my supporting document. And that doesn't necessarily have to be one ISP program. You can choose anything within the same program site, anything for the client anywhere in the system as far as ISP programs go, or in this case, a specific supporting document. So if something is documented here, it will validate my attendance. I'm still billing from attendance. That's still my method of data collection, but I have a validation or kind of an internal audit feature turned on for that attendance. Okay, so you can choose whether to use supporting document or not. Sometimes it's not necessary. And again, that's something you can turn on or off anytime with the attendance as you go along. So if you start out without it, just to get some skill building with your staff, and then later on increase that kind of self-audit check or that validation, you can turn on that support document then. Okay, you don't have to start out with it. Okay, so I've got some attendance there. And let's see, I've got a case note in here. Let me show you what that looks like connecting in the service auth. So this service I have here, Behavior Assistant Services, we've chosen to document that with a case note. Okay, case notes are kind of like your attendance, that we're choosing a rule. The attendance, we were choosing a type, so a set of rules. We've also done that here with a unit calculation rule, and we'll go back and take a look at how those are created as we go along. But this is what I'm choosing here, is one I've set up for my unit calculation rule as timed services. Okay, you can call these anything you want. Timed services make sense to me because this is a 15-minute unit or quarter-hour unit, and I want to collect time on that service and get my unit from time. Okay. All right, so there's our various, we're not going to get into EVV. There was actually, if you're looking for some information on EVV, there was a webinar recorded last week, I believe. It's available on the web. Some really good information on that EVV and scheduling piece. Okay. All right, let's go back here and save. So that's how we're deciding and putting in that connection in the service authorization per service. So again, you don't have to decide for your entire agency that you're going to use attendance or that everything will use ISP. If you've decided that, that's great. If you have a service such as mileage that needs to be done through attendance, that works better through attendance than anything else. Your transportation by trip or by mile might be in something like attendance, and your other timed services might be in something like ISP. Okay, so you can mix and match. Just keep it consistent for your service for everybody across the board. All right, let's go ahead and update that service authorization, and we'll get to it. Okay, so for our ISP, let's start out generating billing data from ISP. What it comes from is your staff entering data on a new ISP data. so we'll go ahead, I'll show you what it looks like for your staff to document, and then we'll go ahead and pull that information for ISP, and then we'll go back and do attendance and case notes. So here we have ISP data new. Okay. So I'm looking for a program here to document on. I'm going to choose my ILS vendor, and let's go ahead and use Happy Howard. Okay. So I've got some different ISP programs here. Keep in mind that what you name these, the effective dates, you can rename this at any time. You can have effective dates or expiration dates. A good way to communicate with staff if you're changing ISP programs in the middle of a plan year, you can easily communicate with your programming staff who are entering new programs, and maybe your biller, right, that needs to know when that change has occurred. By using these extra information or extra details or description in this ISP program name, we can communicate when that's changing, or when, for your staff, when to start documenting on that note. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use this one down here for my day note for this gentleman. And I'm going to go ahead and choose to document on the 2nd. Let's go back a ways and submit. All right, so here is my ISP data. I'm entering new information on an ISP data as a staff person, stating I was with this client for this time. So we'll just go ahead and put in, let's say, 9 o'clock until 10:36. Okay. You don't have to enter, if this is a quarter-hour service, you don't have to enter this on the quarter hour. Okay, your staff should be entering the time as it were. So 10:36 was when we stopped. I'm not rounding at this level here. I'm going to round at the next stage. The system's going to round that for me. So the staff don't have to be rounding when they're entering in their services. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions in here for this gentleman. I've got mine defaulted to yes, just to quickly get some information in here, but several questions on how his day was. Okay, so I've entered my time. My note is billable. Typically, you have a setting in your ISP program that defaults to yes. If you don't, they can go ahead and check mark that to yes, that this is a billable note, and save. Okay. Whoop, I have overlapping time. So I already have some time in this ISP program on this day that I had from 10 a.m. to 1:03. Okay, so maybe I actually was with them from 9 to 10. Okay, and somebody else was with them from 10 to 1:03. Go ahead and save. And that is a setting, that overlap, to not allow overlap. That's a setting when creating your ISP program to not allow time overlap. And it would only give you that warning on that particular ISP program. Okay, as billers, there's ways that we can go look for overlaps across ISP programs if you have that setting turned on to not allow it for that particular ISP program. All right, so let's see, that's entering ISP data. Now let's go use that data for billing. Okay, if there's any questions as we're going along, send them in. And Devin can interrupt me, let me know if you guys got some questions, if I need to stop and go back and cover something. Okay, so now that we have ISP data in this system, I want to use that for billing. Okay. And here is our billing data section on our billing tab. Okay, this is where most of this is housed. If we're entering new billing data from scratch, that's your billing data input method of data collection, which is rarely used except for corrections, things like that. There's quick ways to get data with attendance. So if you're using billing data input for some services in your agency, you might want to talk with your billing specialist about using attendance instead. But again, there's some new billing data. You can create units from scratch. Okay? In this case, we want to go grab our ISP data and use that for billing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this ISP billing here in that billing data section. And here's my first screen. So I am choosing dates. What do I want to convert? It's telling me at the top that I have the agency-wide ISP billing conversion role. That's what we looked at in the user privileges at the beginning of the webinar. So I'm going to choose my dates. So right now, I really just want to bill for the 1st through the 10th, okay? And then also now choose my service description code. Okay, I think I have some in my independent living service here that we just entered. Okay, and I don't have to choose my program site. If you're looking just to generate from a specific program site, you can go ahead and choose that here, or you can leave it on please select. If you're going to be doing the independent living service for your entire agency, don't click that, because then you'd have to go through each program that had that service, and it's a whole lot of unnecessary clicks. Okay, so leave that blank unless you're really just trying to generate for one program site, or maybe your role at your agency is to generate for 2 program sites and somebody does something else, then you can use that. Otherwise, just leave it, please select. Save yourself some clicks. Okay, so once I've got the data in here that I'm looking for, I need to click next. This is going to refresh and bring up some information down below about who has services during that time. Okay, so I have some services here for Happy Howard. He's popped up. He's somebody I can choose. If I had 20 clients, they're all going to show up here, or 100, they're all going to show up here that I can generate together. Okay, I'm going to scroll over here to the right so you can see you have this view of ISP data on the right-hand side of this. Now, if you have 100 clients, this is not going to be efficient to be checking your data from this screen. Okay, there's tons of reports that help you review that data for quality. So you've got your program side typically doing something like your quality note, making sure that the information in the note is good and is billable. And then you can also be looking at other reports that maybe just focus on the date of service, when it was entered, the time that it's marked billable, things like that. Kind of focus more on a concise report of just billing information. Okay, so there's kind of 2 pieces of that puzzle. But I'm going to go ahead and click on this view now so that you can see what that looks like. You have the ability to spot check if you need it. I'll make this a little bigger here. Oh, let's just open that up. Okay, so here is that list of available billing data from that search I just did. Okay, so I've got some notes here, and I can sort these. Any of these buttons anywhere in the Therap modules that have these arrows, you can use that to sort your information. Okay, so I've sorted that by date, so I can see that I have 2 notes here, 10 to 1:30 and 9 to 10, the 4th, the 6th, the 9th. There's all the data I have, and I can go over here and take a look. That here's my duration in minutes. Okay, and so far, none of this has been used for billing. Okay, that means about what we're going to do here is generate billing data. That's what that means. Has this been used for billing? Okay, this has not been generated for billing data yet. Okay, it can only be done one time, so we don't have any risk of duplicating our billing data if we need to come back and run this again. If it's been used for billing, it won't go again. Okay, so these are all ready to go. The times look good to me. Nothing is standing out that I need to fix. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, and it doesn't say select all, but that's what that means in that header. If you had 100 clients, you could click that button there for your select all and get everyone in this list. Okay, all right, so here is our unit calculation rules. Okay, before we start clicking away on these sections, we need to know what service we're dealing with. So if we have independent living service, I know that that is a 15-minute service. Okay, it's not a daily service that I want to change the rules for. I really want time in and out. So let's go ahead, and with that in mind, it's a 15-minute service. Let's talk about our rules and what all of this means. So we have bundle rules at the top here, bundle for each day, and then bundle for date range. What that means is how you want to create that billing data. So bundle for each day means I'm going to get the units on the 2nd or the 4th or the 6th. It's going to show me the unit on the day. Okay, so if I am, most states are requiring something like bundle for each day. Okay, there are a few states that still allow a bundle for date range, and what that means is I have a date range. I'm going to scroll up here. this is my date range. This is what I've put in, the 1st through the 10th. Okay, so what that means here is if I chose bundle for date range, my billing data line is going to look like April 1st through April 10th and give me 30 units. Okay, it's going to total all of those units and put that on one billing data form, which will be one line in the claim. Okay, the bundle for each day is each day has its own billing data and its own units. Okay, and depending on what state you're in, we can add all of those days to one claim. Each day will have its own line within the one claim, or there are a few states that will make each day its own claim. Okay, depending on what you need, we help you through that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this at bundle for each day. It's my default here. We'll go down to this next section of calculation of units. What does this mean? We have duration from time in and out. Okay, so this is letting you know the billing data will be generated using time in and out. So that time we put on the ISP data, or our staff put on the ISP data, we're going to use that time and the rounding rules that we'd already set up in the system for that particular service. We're going to use that rounding rule to create a unit from time. Okay. There are other features you can do with this, a calculation of unit. Use a specified unit. You'll see that the screen changed a little bit when I clicked that. A specified unit could be something like, maybe I'm generating for the entire month and I'm working with a monthly service. So again, back to knowing what service we're generating for up here. If this were a monthly service, might be doing different days here, right? But I could choose that I have a specified unit of 1, or maybe I get 2 units for the month. I can put that specified unit for that entire date range in this box for specified unit. Okay, here is the other option, use number of days. And again, you'll see that the screen changed. Use number of days means that the billing data will be generated. It says here for number of days. So if I had, in looking at this data here, if I had 5 notes or 6 notes on 5 different days, okay, that's 5 days. I'll get a billing unit for each day. Okay, so this is a way that you can use ISP data, even though we have to enter time on that ISP data that we can bill for it. We can say we're going to ignore that time here and we're going to use number of days instead. So it gives me 1 unit for every day that I had any data on. Okay, it doesn't mean that ISP data had to be calculated for the entire 24 hours. It could be 10 minutes that there was some documentation and it's still a daily unit. Okay, depending on your regs and things, again, but that is going to ignore your time and give just 1 unit per day. All right, so let's go back here. We're going to use time in and out. And now let's talk about this rounding algorithm at the bottom. So when you set up your services at the very beginning, in that admin section when you're doing description codes, you tell the system how to round. If you recall, it would say something like, this is a 15-minute unit. I round it half up, which means at 8 minutes, I get to count that as 1 unit. At 15, or maybe at 23 minutes, now I get to count that as 2 minutes, like as if it were 30 minutes. Okay, so we're telling the system there how to round that time. Here, in this rule for applying the rounding algorithm, we're telling the system when to round. Okay, so because we're bundling for each day, this bottom section here, this bottom one, kind of becomes null and void. Okay, we don't need to talk about this one because we're only dealing with 1 day. This bottom one comes into play when we're bundling for date range, okay, and how we're going to calculate that data. So for now, because we're bundled for each day, we're going to ignore that. All right, let's talk about these two and how that breaks down. So for the duration of each data, that means a session, okay? You saw when we looked at that ISP data, when we pulled up the details, that preview for this gentleman, that he had 2 data on, I think it was April 2nd, okay? The rounding here, if we did each data, what that means is it takes the first morning session and rounds it and gets a unit, and then it will round the second session in the afternoon, gets a unit, and then adds the units together, okay? So we're rounding each session separately to get our unit and then pulling our units together at the end, okay? This all data, again, we're dealing right now with just bundling for each day, all data for the day. Okay, what that means is it's going to take all the time, all of the minutes for that day, regardless if there was 1 session or 2 or 5, all of those minutes, and then getting our unit. So we're adding minutes, then converting to a unit. Okay. Your defaults are set as this: bundle for each day, time in and out, and total duration of all data. Okay. My recommendation with these two here is how you're rounding. You might have some requirements set by the state that tells you how to do this. Okay. If you don't know what those are, you could call and ask somebody at the state what you're supposed to do with that. If not, be consistent. Okay. So if you're choosing one, be consistent. Do that each time. I assure you, if you went through and calculated out what would benefit you or what would benefit the state with that, right, it's going to come out in the wash. It may benefit you today. It may benefit Medicaid tomorrow if that's your payer, about how it's rounding and where that unit goes, but it really is all going to come out in the wash. Okay. All right, so I've got my rules set here. I'm going to go ahead and click this button at the bottom, Generate Billing Data. Okay, so the next screen that pops up here is telling me that, yes, I've got this green check mark. I now have a new billing data form, okay, and it's telling me that billing data has been successfully generated. This is my service date. This is new. If you guys are familiar with generating billing data, it didn't show you the date on these before. It's also telling you what ISP data that came from, okay? So we can see our units, our rate comes down here, okay? If somebody had already had a unit for that day, so let's say I had already had billing data from these two notes from April 2nd, okay? It would give me a note here that says that billing data has already been generated for that day. That's good. We don't want it to generate again if we've already collected units from this data, okay? So there's kind of a fail-safe in there that you're not going to duplicate your data, okay? So let's take a look at this billing data. Now, you don't have to click on these when you generate your billing data. You don't have to open this up, but I want to open this so you can see where it comes from. And then just a quick note before I click on that. If you look at these form IDs, if you pay attention to the form IDs, you'll know what you're looking at, right? If you know what this means, you know what data you're looking at and how it all ties together. So this one says I have billing data from these ISP data. This ISD means ISP data, okay? That's where my note occurred, okay? Both of these have been converted to this billing data, okay? So now I have BILL, that's my billing data. Okay, so let's open that up, let's take a look. Okay, so at this step, when we've generated billing data, it actually looks back to your service authorization and looks for several things. Do we have an authorization for this service date we're looking for? We got begin and end dates here, so we've fallen within that time frame, so the service authorization is good. Here's another form ID, SA, service authorization. Okay, so it's looked to this authorization. Okay, and I've got my dates are good. It falls within that authorization. Okay, here's my service code. Okay, and my total number of units. And it's looking at my remaining units. Okay, so if you were out of units at that step when you generated billing data, it would tell you that you were out of units. Okay, so you can go back and take a look at that. Maybe request more from a service coordinator, whatever it is you need to do in that state. Okay, so I have 4.25 units for the service date of April 2nd, and now I have a remaining unit of 3,298.25. Okay, so that step that we did, generating billing data, that's the step that we remove units from the service authorization. So when you're looking at your authorization and it says total number of units, 4,000, you see here at the top, and the remaining unit, okay, that goes down when we click that button, generate billing data. Okay, not when the ISP data is entered, but when we generate billing data, when it converts it to a unit. Okay, now we have brought that unit down and we can manage the remaining unit. Okay, All right, so let's go ahead and look down here at the bottom. You do have an ISP data reference at the bottom. This information is not going to go on your claim. It's for you as you're going through. All of this information is tied together, right? We can see where this information, we've got some units here. Where did it come from? Okay, we have this immediate reference that we can look to see that it came from these two ISP data. Here was the times. I can even open that up and go back to see all of the information, questions that were answered, and maybe when it was entered. Okay, so lots of references, resources here at your fingertips that all gets tied together. So at the end, when you have a claim, you could actually walk back to where that data initially came from, ISP data. Okay, all right, let's close this. Okay, and we're back to that screen where we got, yes, everything was generated, everything looks good. If I had more work to do, I'm going to click this back to billing data generator button at the bottom. This is really important, okay, because I'm going to click that and show you it keeps your dates in here. So if you have lots of services to do, you don't want to keep entering those dates again, right? That could leave some room for error. So we want to leave those dates in there, choosing that back to billing data generator, and then going down to our next service. Okay, so if I had another service to do, I'm going to change that service and, really important, click next. Okay, this one doesn't have anybody in here to do, right? We could go through and find more data. So the next is really important. As you're going through that, we'll give you that list of folks that can be generated. Okay, all right, so that is wrapping up our ISP billing. We're going to go over to attendance and then case note. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard. And I'll show you, real quick, noting this. No matter where the data came from, whether it's ISP or attendance or case note, your billing data looks the same, and it's all housed here in this search. So I just pulled up that billing data to show you what it looked like. We could look at that billing data again by searching our billing data and pulling that up here. Okay, so one of the ones I just created was for Happy Howard. This is what we just looked at. Right, this one was 4.4. Okay. So it doesn't matter where it's come from, ISP or attendance or case note, it's all converted into a billing data, and you can search that here. All right, let's go look at our attendance. So I'm going to search my attendance so that I can look at more than one day at a time. Okay, and we'll do the same dates, the 1st through the 10th. Okay, I'm going to choose my attendance type. Now I have some information in this day program and a tier A. And again, my ILS vendor. Okay, so I'm going to search my data here. When you search attendance, it automatically puts you on this update tab. Okay, you can change information if you need to. If you have information to input, you can certainly go over to the input tab and enter attendance for more than one day, more than one person at a time. Okay, so the attendance new is entering one data. Attendance search is typically where we're working to generate billing data, but you could also input more than one day at a time. So if I wanted to come in here, I already have some data for the 1st through the 5th. I've left my Saturday and Sunday blank. I could go ahead and say that there was excused absence or that they were on leave. Okay, both clients on leave for the weekend. Okay, so I have everything check marked, and I could submit that one attendance option for both days for 2 clients. Okay. And then same thing with approving. I already have some approved data in here, but again, you can select all attendance, okay, and approve your data. Okay, so I've already approved this data. We've already looked at it, reviewed all of the times, and everything looks really good. There's several ways to do that, just like your ISP. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up so you can see, just for Happy Howard, if I wanted to look at all of his data, this isn't the most efficient way to do that person by person, but just like we did in ISP, you have the ability to pull that and take a look at the data that's in here. So I have some times here. Okay, he was here from 8 to 4 every day, it looks like. and this ends up being a daily unit. Okay. If my service was a time-based 15-minute or hourly service, this would kind of give you that preview of what that unit might look like. This particular one is converting to just a daily unit. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. All right, and over here, generate billing data. So when you're generating billing data for attendance, you'll see there's not a lot of rules like our ISP programs to choose as we're doing this step, because we've already set that up. We've already told the system when to round, what this looks like, if it's a daily unit or if it's a time-based unit. We've already set that up at the very beginning. Okay, and that is in our attendance type details that we've set up. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. I'm going to choose my details over here, and you can see that how this particular attendance type was set up. I've named it day program, and I'm not using time in and out. Okay, so the staff could put time in and out if necessary, but ultimately I have present here is 1 billing unit. Okay, a half day is 0.5. Okay, excused or unexcused. Lots of different ways that you can set up these attendance types. We can use time and then round, just like we did with the ISP. You have the ability to say when you're rounding. Okay. We can also set up attendance, like I mentioned earlier, to do mileage, where you can enter your direct units in here in the attendance. So a direct miles driven, okay, would be usually 1 unit per mile type of situation, or even something like a durable medical equipment. You could put in $1 as 1 unit and put in, instead of present or leave, you could put in that dollar amount, which converts to the unit. Okay. All right, so I'm ready to generate this billing data. I've got lots of stuff in here, my 8 to 4. You saw that this is ultimately going to give me 1 unit per day anyway. Okay. I'm going to select all attendance here and then generate billing data. Okay, so I've got some notes here, successfully generated for billing. This screen looks a little different than when you're doing ISP, but the information is still there, and I can still click on this billing data here to open that up and view, just like before, that it came from this service authorization. Okay, my dates, that's this service, and then I got 1 unit per day. And there's still a reference, attendance data reference at the bottom. Okay, so I can see where that came from. All right. Close that. So in looking at this screen here, I'm going to just quickly scroll through and make sure that everything looks good. The attendance option wasn't billable. We knew that. We had some leave days in there. So that's perfect. Okay. That particular one was set to not billable. So that's good. And then successfully submitted for billing. Okay. If I were out of units, it would let me know that I was out of units. Okay. I might need to go back and take a look at that, make sure the service authorization was accurate, if there's anything else I need to do with it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And you'll see the attendance data actually changes color. So you have a color legend up here at the top as your attendance data goes through each stage. Okay, so we've got our input would be either incomplete, in prep, or new. So those 3 colors, we could see those on that input tab. And then once you've gone to the approved tab and actually check marked it, it turns green, and then orange for submitted for billing. Okay. All right. Let's go, since we've got some billing data here, let's go back and now look at our case notes. Okay, so actually, before we start that, let's go back kind of behind the scenes and how the case note and the attendance was created. Because as you saw with ISP billing, you're choosing your options as you're generating billing data. With attendance and case note, it's slightly different. It's already set in the system. So as we were talking about attendance, scroll down here to our billing information here. Let's look at our attendance types. So the one that we just pulled up was this day program 123. And I showed you that when we clicked on that green eye, it brought up these details. Okay, so in setting up those details, this was the name. We chose no time in and out. We're not using any advanced rules. And then here are my options. Okay, these are totally customizable. You put in whatever you want here. Okay, option codes are just shorthand for that. Some of the reports use these option codes to make them a little bit more concise. And then my billing unit. Okay, and what's billable and what's not. Okay, so let's go look at one with time so you can see what that looks like, because the rules are still there. Even, you know, with the ISP we had, the rules are still there. Let's use this one here. Okay, so here I'm using my time in and out. Okay, so that was one of the questions when we looked at ISP billing. That was one of those questions. What are we doing? Are we using time in and out? And this one says yes. Okay, so we want the time that we've entered in the attendance data. And then this use duration, that's the same thing we talked about before, like in the ISP, when to round. Are we rounding at the entire day, or are we rounding each session and then adding the units together to get our unit for the entire day? Okay, so same type of thing. It's just that these settings are already in place. You don't have to choose them each time you do your generate billing data. Okay. This particular one has some advanced rules. We were talking about this earlier when we were looking at the service authorizations about using that ISP data as supporting document. I'm still using attendance as my method of data collection, but this is giving me some control over when it will release that attendance data that I can bill from it. Okay, and you have, again, you have control over whether you want that being one supporting document, any program that's documented for ISP, or the same program only. That means where you have that service authorization stored, it will look to that same program site for any ISP data completed that day. And then you get to decide what that count would be. Okay. So I can put 10 in here if I need ISP data count, or if I need every shift to document, I need 3 ISP data count, or 4, depending on your shifts. Okay. All right, so that was the kind of behind the scenes of how we got that attendance. Let's look at the behind the scenes for case note before we go on. So when we looked at the service authorization earlier, you saw when we chose case note that we were choosing what's called a unit calculation rule. Okay, and that is set up right here, unit calculation rule. So I'm going to take a look at my list so you can see what I have in here. There's a few. Okay. I have this one that we chose in the service authorization. We named timed services. Okay, so whether it was a hourly service or a 15-minute service, I can use this rule for both of those scenarios. So it doesn't have to be one particular service, but I have a set of rules here for all of my timed services. Again, whether it's 15 minutes or an hour type of service, I'm going to do these settings. So this looks pretty familiar. It is the details that we saw on ISP data. Okay, it's all the same. Bundle for each day, bundle for date range, which one you choose there. And then on our timed services here, likely I'm going to use that duration from time in and out. I've got data coming in on that case note that includes time, whether it's duration or a time in and out, and I want to use that to get my unit. Okay, if this were a daily type service for that case note, I could choose number of days. I'm probably going to name this something more like daily services in that case instead of timed services. Okay, and then again, that choice of when you're going to round. Okay, all right, so all of this stuff, again, exactly like the ISP data, it's just decided beforehand, and then you don't have to choose those when we generate billing data, and I'll show you that right now. So let's go back to the dashboard. Okay, and in that same section, we're going to go back to our billing tab. Okay, and again, we're back here at our billing data. So the only one that's not here is the attendance, and that is inside the attendance module you would generate from here. Okay, so we're going to go back here and we see case note billing. So earlier we did ISP. We're going to go ahead and click on case note billing. Okay, and it looks pretty similar to the one before. Okay, we're going to choose our service, and I think I have some behavior assistance services. We'll check it out here. And then our service dates. So we'll go ahead and use the same dates, the 1st through the 10th. Okay, and I can choose my program site if I need to. Again, if you want to do this for the entire agency, just leave it blank. It's not required. You don't see a little red asterisk there, so you can skip it. Okay, let's search, see what I've got. Okay, so again, if I had more than one person, it would show my entire list of folks here. Okay, and just like ISP, I can view my details. Okay, so I can see what I've got in here, and I can sort those. I want to sort it from the top down. So I have the 1st, the 3rd, the 8th. I've got some time. And depending on the questionnaire that you have in the case note, some of those questionnaires can be set up with time duration. These two right here are just giving me time duration, or this is giving me a time in and out. Okay, with case note, you can use either one. Okay, so these notes came from different questionnaires that are set up in your case notes. Okay, there's a lot of flexibility with your case notes regarding how you're going to document that service. A lot of times we see those like this behavior service here or a nursing type service. You can set it up to be like a SOAP note. Lots of different options with the case notes. So there are some recorded webinars on case notes. It's pretty cool. You can go check those out, how to set up and use those case notes for different types of scenarios. All right, so I've got some data here. It is billable. It hasn't been used for billing yet, and my times look good. Okay, again, this is that kind of spot check. I don't want to be using this to be checking 100 clients and their details. Okay, there's other reports that I can be using to verify the quality of note and maybe just focusing on some billing data, looking at my dates of service, when it was entered, and my time, things like that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and choose all my individuals. This, again, is that select all option. Even though it doesn't say select all, that's what that means. So if I had 100 clients, I could see that. Okay, generate billing data, just like before. Go ahead and click that button. Okay, and then here are my notes. So I've got that green check mark, okay, and my billable unit and the date. So they look slightly different than the ISP data, but all the information is the same. I still have a billing data form. Okay, it's still giving me that preview of that unit over here, what came from it. Okay, so I could, again, click on that billing data, and it is referencing this service authorization. Okay, we're good on our dates. Here's the service. And for the 1st, I had 3 units. Okay, and at the bottom, just like the others, it tells you, I don't know that I pointed that out, it gives you this system message of how this was calculated. Okay, so these are the following settings of how you got that: bundled for each day, use duration of time in and out, and applying rounding for all data. Okay, so if you have a daily type service and you end up with 54 units or something strange has come along with that, take a look at this system message. Because likely that rule was inputted incorrectly. Maybe use time in and out instead of the daily. Okay. And we also have case note reference. So just like the others, we've got this reference embedded into this billing data, so I can go back and see where that came from. Okay. All right, so we'll close that one. If something, just like the others, if something wasn't generated successfully, okay, all these green check marks say they were good, there would be a red X there, and it would tell you why. Again, that same scenario of either they already had data that day, or there wasn't enough units. If they ran out of units, either by the entire service authorization, or if you had some daily or weekly or monthly restrictions entered into that service authorization, it's going to tell you that you were out of units for either the restriction or the entire service off. Okay, so it gives you that note. You can go back and take a look at those, see if something needs to change. If there was an error, or if that client's really out of units, then again, depending on your settings, you can come back later and generate if you add more units, or if you have settings for creating non-billable units, it would go ahead and give you a billing data. Let's open that back up. Okay, you would still get a billing data even if you were out of units that day. It wouldn't be under billable unit. It would show under total non-billable units. Okay, so you have the ability in your service authorization to turn that on or off. If you just want to leave the data, whether it's ISP or attendance or case note, if you just want to leave the data unused, right? We looked at it before, said used for billing, yes or no. Okay. If you're out of units, you could leave that data unused. You could come back and grab it later if you made some adjustments to your service off to add more units. Some states allow that if you've asked for extra units. Otherwise, you can have it create billing data with non-billable units. You can get that on our report. Okay, so you can see how many units were overutilized for the month or the year, and report that as needed. Okay. All right, so we've got a few more minutes here. That is generating billing data. That's each function, that ISP, okay, our case note, and then our attendance from here. Before you were to move on, you would be looking at that billing data before you added it to a claim, right? We want to review that data again. We've already reviewed it in terms of quality of note and the information that's there before we generated billing data, but now we have units instead of time or present absent, and we want to view the units before we go add that to a claim. Okay, make sure all the rules, everything was good. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that, review the units. All of that billing data, regardless of where it came from, again, we mentioned this earlier, that you can search that billing data. Okay, so we can search the billing data, look for it there. We can run a summary. I'm going to pull it up just so you can see what this looks like. Lots of different ways that you can filter out or sort that information here. And then you have all of these columns available to you that you can choose from. Okay, so if I just want to see the individual, the service, the program site, and then maybe my units, begin and end dates might be important to me as well. But I can look at my number of units and maybe my non-billable units as well. I can review the data that way. Okay, lots of different options here. So play around with that. You can't hurt this. You can run this report as many times as you need. Okay, so again, this is running billing data. This isn't looking at ISP data before it's been converted to a billing data. We're looking at our billing data summary. Okay, same thing with our utilization reports. This is new. Caseload-based utilization report is new this week. It gives you the ability to assign just particular, if it's program-based or individual-based caseloads for whatever that user has in their user privileges. They can look at the utilization for just that section. Agency-based utilization is what it was before, so if you're used to seeing that utilization here, that's now called agency-based utilization report. Okay. And there are some changes with that report, and there'll be a few more coming, but that new report here gives you a little bit more control over how you want to look at your data. Okay, so same thing with that billing data summary. Let's go ahead and pull one of these up here so you can see what this looks like. Oh, it's slowing down. There we go. And I don't want any of the other ones here. Before you could only choose one, now you can choose multiple. We'll go this month and search. Prior to this change, the utilization would force you to download that information. Now you can preview it before you download if you don't want that PHI in your system, or somebody doesn't have the ability to do Excel sheets here. So we'll actually just look at this in terms of a PDF report. And you'll see it looks the same, pretty similar to what it was before. Okay, make that a little bigger here so you can see all of my different services that we just generated, and each day there was. Okay, so we had behavior was from case note. Here are those units. My ILS day program, that was that daily from attendance. Okay, we had some independent living service from ISP. These are all of Happy Howard services. Okay, so I want to make sure that there's nothing in here that's out of place before I go add all of this to a claim. Okay. All right, so we're getting to the end here, just a few minutes over time, but that was looking at ISP data, attendance, and case note for generating and what all of those buttons mean. Haven't seen any questions yet. We'll leave this open for a few more minutes. And if you guys have some questions, go ahead and throw that in there. Thank you for taking your time out of your Friday and joining us for this webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please ask them. I'd love to get all of your information to you as quickly as possible.
Hey, Dawn, we have a question.
Yeah.
Can there be more than one entry per day in attendance for one person?
Yes. If there are not different options, so let's go back and take a look at that so you can see what I'm talking about. You can enter multiple times. Go ahead.
And they gave an example. So if a staff puts in a time from 10 to 11 and another staff may do attendance and do another entry from 3 to 4, can that be multiple times for the same person?
Yes, yes. So let me show you how to do that. So if we're looking at our day here, I'm just looking at April 12th, okay, and I'm saying Happy Howard was here, we'll say present, from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, okay. I can submit that time. So my first staff person, my first shift is going to submit that time, okay. There's several ways to get some more information in here. I can either click on this P, okay, and open that up, okay, and enter more time, add more time. Let's go ahead and do 11 to 1 o'clock and update. Okay, so now you'll see I've got a 2 on that clock there. I've got 2 time entries. Okay, I can do that person by clicking on that P. I can also go to the update, and if there's more than one person that came back, if there was a day program in the morning, they left for community inclusion, and now everybody's coming back for day program, I can select more than one person to add time for. So I can select all and say, now we're looking for 1400 to 1600, okay, and select more than one person and update. Okay, you didn't have any initial time in there to update, so that's why it didn't show up. But now I have 3 times. Okay, and if I clicked on that box to open it, I would still see all 3 times and can add more. Okay. So a few different ways to handle that. All right, any other questions coming in?
No, that appears to be the only one.
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar has been recorded, so it'll be up available on the Therap website within the next few days. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.